March is Women's History Month. Women's History Month is a time where we pause to salute the invaluable contributions of women, both past and present. Today, I recognize 8 visionary women from my congressional district who have impacted and changed the course of North Carolina history and in turn, the course of America's history. First, Ms. Dolly Burwell. Dolly Burwell is a native of Vance County, North Carolina. She led a community protest in 1982 against the state by blocking trucks that were carrying PCB-laced soil from being dumped in a landfill near her community. Mrs. Burwell led these protests. The protests were widely regarded as the beginning of the environmental justice movement, and they were heralded by the Washington Post as the greatest civil rights movement since the 1960s. These demonstrations resulted in Dolly being jailed on 5 occasions for civil disobedience. Because of her activism, Dolly Burwell was ultimately successful in changing North Carolina's environmental safety practices, and she was appointed chair of the joint Warren County State PCB Landfill Working Group, which secured more than $25 million from the state to detoxify the PCB landfill. Next, Congresswoman Eva McPherson Clayton, a dear friend. Congresswoman Clayton became the first African American from North Carolina to serve as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, the first since George H. White last held office in 1901. Eva Clayton won her seat to represent the 1st District in a 1992 special election. She served in the U.S. House of Representatives with distinction for 10 long years before being appointed as Assistant Director General of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organizations. In this role, Mrs. Clayton was responsible for overseeing efforts to increase agricultural productivity and help reduce hunger and poverty worldwide, a cause she was deeply committed to while she served in Congress. There's also Dr. Joanne Woodard. Dr. Woodard is a childhood friend. She was my neighbor when I was a child many years ago, and a community friend, and even my high school classmate. Dr. Joanne Woodard is a licensed psychologist. She lives in Wilson, North Carolina. She spent much of her career advancing children's educational needs. After spending years as a teacher and psychologist, working to improve the educational outcomes for African American children in our community, Dr. Woodard took action and founded the Youth Enrichment Program. We called it YEP, which was an 8-week summer camp based out of 3 community churches. And I recall this fledgling program many years ago and recall that I even made a small donation to its success. YEP prospered for 8 years until a charter law was passed in North Carolina allowing nonprofit organizations to establish public schools. Thus, in 1997, Dr. Woodard founded the Sally B. Howard School for the Arts and Education. And I might add that Sally Baldwin Howard continues to live in our community and is doing quite well to be a woman well into her 90s. The school that Dr. Woodard founded continues to be a great institution in our community. Its mission continues to be to ensure that every child, whether that child is privileged or not privileged, gets an education that will allow them to become successful and a credit to their community. Now, there are many other female leaders in my congressional district, but time simply will not permit me to acknowledge them in great detail. But I will mention that they include former New Bern Alderman and State Representative Barbara Lee. It includes Mrs. Mary Rowe of Goldsboro, which is in Wayne County. It also includes Reverend Vanna Horton, who is the senior pastor of New Oxley Hill Baptist Church. It includes Dr. E. Livonia Ingram Allison, a community leader, educator in Durham, North Carolina. And finally, Mrs. Ernestine Wooten of Goldsboro, North Carolina, which is in Wayne County. Ernestine has been a civic leader and a revered teacher in Goldsboro for many years. She taught at Dillard High School. Her husband, Mr. Wooten, was the principal. John Henry Wooten was his name, the principal of Dillard High School. Now, all of these women embody the reasons why we recognize and celebrate Women's History Month. Along with countless others, these women help make this nation great. We must support the continued advancement of women in all of their endeavors. You see, when women succeed, we all succeed. Thank you for listening.